Okay, I think it's all installed now, and I hope it works. I will tell you something about Norway. As most people know, I think Norway is leading in electrical mobility. In sense, they're having the most pure electrical cars. So not talking about plug-in hybrid cars, but pure electric cars. And Norway, not only the adopters, the early adopters, if you speak in terms of the division theory, are using electrical vehicles, but also the early majority is starting to use them. So not only people that have a high interest in technology, but more the common people are starting to use electric cars. And I actually want to answer this question, what to learn from Norway, by looking at a different Norwegian infrastructure that I get to know when I was living in Norway. And that is the cabin infrastructure. I can say that almost all Norwegians are in love with the nature. And it's a national hobby, I think, to walk through the nature and to explore. And they developed a whole infrastructure to facilitate this. And when I was new living in Norway, I thought I should try it because everyone's very positive about it and had good experience. So I did it. I received a key, a very small key, and they told me to follow these marks. It's a T sign. It's a bit out of the picture, and just walk for a day, and then you'll find a hut where you can sleep. So that's what I did. But unless they told me it would be there, it was still quite of a relief that I found actually a place to sleep, a hut, after like 8 hours of walking and not seeing anyone and don't having any connection by my phone. So it was quite a relief that I found this hut. And I found out quite quickly that it was suited actually to all my needs. They had a cupboard with all food in it. There was some wood to make a fire. There were blankets. Everything was there actually to just have a comfortable stay. Yeah, you can see from the previous picture, I had a small backpack, so everything was there. So it suited all my needs. And after I did a few hikes and a few days, I actually found out that it worked as a system. It was logical that there was a hut after 8 days walking. It was just a system. It worked together. They thought about everything actually, how to get your water, to pick it from a van actually. And there was a key, there was all kind of system, everything was organized. It was a routine, every place was the same in some sense, except for the views and some extras, there were some things there. And it was not only the cabins itself that made it very comfortable and made it a nice experience, it was the fact that there was a whole system around it. It was an organization, the DNT, that organized it. There were maps, there was points of information. So all that together made it a pleasant experience. And actually this experience we can translate it quite easily to literature and what we can see in different infrastructures. There are some characteristics that are important to make an infrastructure attractive to use, because you have to trust and rely on this infrastructure. From literature you see 3 characteristics: cheap or affordable. It should be not a real obstacle to use it, the price. The second one is it should be reliable. You can imagine walking for 8 hours and not finding a place to sleep. It's quite dramatic maybe even. And at last of them, it should be comfortable. And I want to say a bit more about the last one because it's a tricky one, it's not easy to measure. What made me comfortable to go walking to these huts, to these cabins? First of all, it was the experience of other people that told me it was really good and it was a nice experience. Second of all, it was that it functioned as a system. They were all huts or cabins were complementing each other. That made it a very good experience. And also, it was that the total system was just adjusted to my needs. It was my needs as hiker were taken into account. So it was also a very important one. And the last one, it was not only the cabins that made it easy, but it was a whole system. So it was a social technical system that made it attractive to go there. And I want to actually translate these insights and this theory to the Norwegian charging infrastructure. And I first want to consider cheap. I would say, as a Dutch person, it's cheap to to charge a car in Norway. Most of the normal charges are free of charge, so actually municipality paying for that, or some companies itself are paying for that, so they're free. Fast chargers nowadays becoming paid, and the Norwegians are not glad with that because they think it's very expensive. And why it's expensive? Because it's more expensive than you having electricity from your household. So it's a big price difference between that. And it's also a part of the perception because most electricity is gained by this type of installations in Norway. So people feel it's just coming free and it's just running down the river. So why should someone earn on it, or why should we pay on it? So it also makes it difficult for the business or for people to invest in the charging points. They don't see that there's opportunity to make money on it. So is it cheap? You can discuss on that. Reliable, I think that's not much discussion there yet. No, the Norwegian charging infrastructure is not reliable. There is a association in Norway that's promoting electric mobility, and they actually advise you to have at least a plan B when you go on a trip. They actually tell you cannot rely on it. If you look at the Norwegian, I cannot walk very much, I think, because of this line. If you look at the Norwegian charging infrastructure, they started to develop it very early. So actually the first chargers are still there, and they are just sockets, outdoor sockets. You have them, yeah, the grey one. I cannot point it there. And the next one is with duct tape around it. You also see them quite often. So it's difficult to rely on that. So you have all types of different types of chargers in the Norwegian charging infrastructure, ranging from very simple outdoor sockets to the more advanced fast chargers that are connected. But in general, they are not really reliable on it. Someone from the industry on fast chargers was also saying that they have a very large downtime, so it's difficult to rely on them. If you look at the third aspect, comfortable. That's more an answer. You have not one answer on it. If you look at a lot of people in Norway start driving an electric car because it's very comfortable. They have their own charging facilities at their own home. Most people have their own parking spot because there are less than 20 persons per square kilometer in Norway, so you don't have to be very rich to have that. So it's very accessible to have to drive around with your electric car. So in a lot of sense, it's very attractive and comfortable to use the charging infrastructure and to have it. And it's even better because there are also some public chargers at your work or in the city. So it makes it even more comfortable to use it because you always have a backup solution. So a lot of people really like it and find it very, very comfortable. But if you talk to the more intensive users of the charging infrastructure, mostly the people that only have an electric car, so a pure electric car, if you ask them if it's comfortable, they will say no, it's not comfortable at all. This is just an example of a charger which is blocked, but actually the information says you can just charge there. It was there for years, I heard, so it was not really a coincidence. But actually the people say it's, for example, impossible to find the chargers during the night or in twilight. And yeah, you know, Norway, maybe in winter, it's quite dark. So if you look back to the 4 points I raised from the hike, one thing is important to make it comfortable is the experience of other people. You can find a lot of brave stories on the internet and people telling them they have an adventure with the electric vehicle, driving all across across Norway. So it's not easy, it's an adventure. So comfortable, not really. Needs. Is it really suited to my needs as an electric vehicle driver? The fact that they are actually drivers telling me you can find a fast charger everywhere. It's not a normal place, a logical place you can find them. People were saying that they were in the middle of nowhere, a fast charger, and have to wait there. One driver even told me his wife has a pacemaker, and then they are not allowed to sit in the car during charging, so they had to wait outside in winter in the middle of nowhere to charge their car. So you hear a lot of stories like that. So you cannot really say the needs of the drivers are really taken into account while developing the charging infrastructure. System was another aspect that I raised, that it was not only cabins, but actually the whole system, the fact that all cabins complement each other made it attractive. In Norway there are a lot of different owners of the charging facilities, and it also shows in the lake of that it is a system. They are quite a standalone and not really complement each other. And the last aspect I raised, that it's important to have more than only the cabins. It's more than only the chargers, the whole system around it. You need to have signs, information. And actually it's quite of a lake of information. They have a national database to collect all this information, but they also know that most of the information is not correct anymore. So there is, some people say it's really comfortable to drive an electric car. It's normally the people that have 2 cars, and other people, actually the intensive user of the charging infrastructure tells a different story.
Thank you. My part will be shorter, I can say, so don't worry. But the question that we raised in the title was, what can we learn? Well, let's first have a look at where we are. Because in the Netherlands, it is about here. It is really innovators drive electrically, a little bit the early innovators, of the early adopters. But in Norway, despite the concerns that Noortje mentioned, the early majority is already taking up electric mobility. So it is much normal to drive electrically in Norway there. And you get the neighbor effect. My neighbor buys an EV, and I try it out and I say, hey, this is a much better car than what I used to have. So you get much more the idea that EV is the best alternative. That is, in particular, when people have 2 cars in the household. Because then you can do the normal driving electrically, and only if you have to go a long way, go skiing in the Alps, you take the other car. So, there are a few takeaways, and this is one. If we want to stimulate electric driving in the Netherlands, we need to look at the infrastructure as a system. And that is more than the individual charging poles. That is more than having a card or a key to open the individual charges. It is the whole network behind it, including payment, including grid, including other facilities, the information about the charging infrastructure. And let's have a look at the complete picture in Norway and compare that to the Netherlands. So this is what Norway did over the years. So they started with electric mobility in the 90s. So they have a long history. And very important, from the beginning there has been a political will to make this work, to be front runner in electric mobility, to make the world a better place. They have a national industry. They are not really into business anymore, but the think and the body were easy to obtain electric vehicles. They are a very wealthy country. And they have the funds and the possibilities available to put in a lot of money, to make generous incentives. And normal people pay very high vehicle taxes. So there is a large potential to improve it. They have abundant clean energy. And you have to look at e-mobility as a system instead of merely the EVs. Well, in the Netherlands, I think we also have the economic advantage. We can do quite a bit. Politics, not so stable. This is not the part of a conference on politics on electric mobility.